and put some posts out and things like that.
Okay.
And, I got a newsletter out today, this morning, so I talk about last minute, but
that's
frustrating.
I'm impressed you're getting it done because you were pretty sick.
Yeah, it's but it should have been happening the end of last week, but it didn't. So I know a few people signed up today on the back of the newsletter.
We're getting a new registrant every a couple of an hour right now too, so they keep rolling in. All right, you guys, I'm going to turn off my camera and hit the start button, and you guys have fun. Okay, we're here if you need us.
Okay, thanks, Andrea.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Chicago Responsible Jewelry Conference's online gem fair. I'm Liz Kantner, and I'm excited to introduce, although it feels like everybody already knows him, Stuart Poole, owner of 1948. Stuart is a specialist in responsibly mined and fully traceable colored gemstones, mainly sourced directly from mines in Sri Lanka and Tanzania. He runs gem trading companies 1948, Ruby Fair, and Crown Gems, as well as being one of the co-founders of Fair Luxury, a group focused on positive change in the jewelry industry, and a key member of Moyo Gemstones Project, which you might have seen them speak earlier today. Hi, Stuart.
Hi there. Hi, Liz.
So tell us about your companies and everything you do.
Wow. Okay. I'll start with a bit of a introduction. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for choosing to come along and listen to the session today. I'm coming to you from the UK, where I run a business, as Liz mentioned, called 1948, and we're supplying fully traceable and responsibly sourced colored gemstones. Again, as Liz said, we mainly source from Sri Lanka and Tanzania, and we've been doing that now for just under 10 years. So I would guess, compared to some of the people in the industry, I'm quite a newbie, but we've come quite a long way in a relatively short space of time. And I think the main things really to say about our company is that we try to give as much traceability and transparency to our gemstones as we absolutely can, and to do that, we try to source as close to the mines as possible. So we actually run our own mine through my partner company, Crown Gems, in Sri Lanka. We have our own cutting workshop also in Sri Lanka. So we can take the rough material from our mine to our cutting workshop and then directly to the market. So it's the shortest possible supply chain and as traceable as we can make it. And that's really what we spent most of the last decade trying to set up, so that we were able to have this full traceability. And with our more recent projects, so the Ruby Fair project and the Moyo Gems project, again, we're working directly with miners and getting the rough material from the source, so that we know exactly where it's come from. And that means that we can tell all of our customers all about the gemstones, even down to, especially in the case of Moyo, the individual miners who have mined the gemstones. So it's really a great level of detail.
That's incredible, to just be able to track that, to see the full supply chain and understand where everything's fully coming from, and the transparency of it is really powerful. So why the name 1948?
Yes, so when we started the business, I started with a good friend of mine who is of Sri Lankan origin. His parents were both Sri Lankan, and he was the one who came to me with this amazing idea, and he said, "Oh, fantastic idea. I've been to Sri Lanka so many times, and I know that there are amazing gemstones there, and we should start a gem business." And neither of us really knew much about it. But of course, because of that connection, our main source at the beginning was Sri Lanka. So we thought, okay, well, we need a name that might have some significance and some connection with Sri Lanka. So 1948 is actually the year of independence of Sri Lanka. And we thought, well, that's quite a clever idea, because when we go to Sri Lanka, people will say, "Oh, you've chosen 1948, our year of independence." Actually, what has happened is that, of course, most of the people we deal with in the gem industry there are certainly much younger than I am, and so they often ask us whether that was the year in which our company was founded or something like that, and every so often even whether that's the year when I was born. So only after a particularly heavy weekend.
My guess was it was the year your company was founded, but I love that backstory. So what makes you different from other gem suppliers?
Well, I think the things that I've mentioned already are really the main differentiators. When we started off those years ago and we came into the industry, of course, we very naively thought that we would be able to go and we would source gemstones, and gem brokers and other gem traders would be able to tell us where their stones are from. And as, of course, many of us know, that is really quite a rarity in our industry, even now, which is, it's a great shame. And so, we thought, well, it's going to be obvious. And then we realized very suddenly, very soon, that wasn't going to be the case, and that we would have to really, as I've mentioned, control our own supply chain and set up our own supply chain so that we could give people some level of assurance that they were buying a gemstone from a particular place, and that they could have peace of mind that the gemstone was conflict-free, was sourced in a responsible way, that there was no child labor involved, all of those kind of guarantees. And of course, as you're aware of, with the Gem Boutique this year, we have a number of vendors now who are all doing very similar things in that respect. And it's fantastic that we've had this progress and we've been able to come together as a little family of gem suppliers with this same mentality and this same ethos, that we're all very keen to be able to tell people as much as we possibly can about their gemstones. So whilst these are differentiators between my company and the wider world of gem traders, actually there are at least a few of us now that are doing these kind of things.
That's really great. My experience is more so in diamonds, which I know are very challenging to trace. And also I work more so consumer facing as a marketer. And I know that this is top of mind for a lot of consumers. So I think it's really interesting for me to learn more about it. And compared to 10 years ago, there's so many more suppliers and there's more transparency in all of this. So it's cool to see how everything's evolved. So in terms of ethical gemstones, how would you describe that, what that is?
That's a great question, which I'm asked very frequently, in fact. And I think it distills really into two components for most people. Of course, the word ethics and ethical, they mean different things to different people. But when we're talking about the gemstones, in the conversations that I have with our customers and with our colleagues, is that an ethical gemstone really is about the people and the planet and how we treat both. So most of our customers are very concerned that, of course, everyone in the supply chain is treated fairly, that they're working in good conditions, that they are being given a fair reward so that they are able to earn a decent living from their activities. So it's about taking care of the people at every stage of the supply chain. And then this other aspect is really about the environmental side, of course, because as you know, certainly dealing with diamonds, that the horror stories and the video clips that you see all over the internet about the huge impact of mining and how irresponsible mining has caused such destruction. So people are very concerned, naturally, as we all should be, about the impact of our mining operations in particular, but also the processing and the cutting as well, on the planet. So making sure that, of course, we're not disturbing habitats, that we're restoring the land. So land restoration is a huge topic, and just making sure that we are taking care to absolutely minimize our impact and use the best possible techniques, so that whilst there's always going to be a bit of disruption from mining by the nature of the activity, but that we can do it in the most responsible and efficient way as possible, minimizing our impact. So I think really an ethical gemstone takes into account both of those elements, or as much as possible of both elements, people and planet.
That's an amazing answer. I think that it's become so important to end consumers because jewelry has become, it's always been this, but such a meaningful thing that you wear so close to your skin. So of course, it's important. Sorry, my light keeps changing. It's so important that we know that this gem comes from a really special place, a really important, thoughtful, sustainable, ethical place. So to you, what would you say sustainability means?
Yes, that's interesting, of course, because we do hear a lot about the term of sustainable mining, when it's fairly apparent that mining, in essence, is not a sustainable activity. When you're digging things out of the ground that have taken millions of years to form and to get to a place where you can actually extract them, those things aren't going to grow back in any time scale that is conceivable to humans. So it's a bit of a kind of one-way street when you're taking something out of the ground. So for us, sustainability, I think, is all about making good use of the resources, of the money, essentially, that you are making from your gem mining activities. And especially with the Moyo Gems project that we mentioned earlier, and I hope people maybe listening to the talk earlier on, some kind of on brand there with the Moyo prototype. But with the Moyo project, there's a great emphasis really on trying to use the money, obviously, initially to benefit the communities, the mining communities directly, but also then to allow them to have, say, money to invest in other activities so that they can have a more diverse economy than just relying on the mining itself, which eventually at some point will probably diminish. So I think the sustainability when it comes to mining is really looking at a bigger picture. So looking at investment in other activities, looking at things like food security, that type of thing is really important. That that the communities are able to take some of that money and invest it in these other things which will support them in the longer term.
Yeah, I watched that chat earlier about Moyo Gems, and it's really interesting having heard about that project. So if you're able to go watch the replay, definitely do that. So let's talk more specifically about gems. Do you have any current favorites?
Well, that's sounding like a broken record. I would say that the gems that we're finding through the Moyo Gemstone project are my favorite in respect of the fact that they are having the biggest impact, probably. That project is probably, of the things that we've done so far with the business, it's the most exciting project because of the impact and the potential impact going forward that we're likely to have if everything goes well. And so I would say, not just because they're beautiful gemstones, and I can show you a couple, and some of them are on in the boutique, or also that people can have a look at. They are in themselves and beautiful items, but I think they're also amazing because of the fact that they are enabling this development, and so that's what makes them much more of a favorite to me, beyond just saying, oh, okay, I like blue sapphires, for example, which of course I do, because that is the amazing stone that we get from Sri Lanka, and I don't want this to be too biased towards the Moyo side. But yeah, I think using the activities and of the project, and using our industry, I guess, as a whole for something positive and something good, is what we're all about. Everyone probably who's coming to this conference, that's what they're interested in, is how are they going to do things better, how are we going to have a positive impact. And probably for that reason, beyond just the beauty and the color, then the Moyo stones are my current favorite.
Yeah, Monica chimed in the comments here saying, I love that Stuart's gems are cut in Sri Lanka by their team there. Cutting is a big question mark in the supply chain.
That's very true. We do see a lot of about the mining side, as I was talking about just a second ago. But we mustn't forget, of course, that the other crucial part of the supply chain is the cutting, and the cutting and the faceting of the gemstones can be done sometimes in terrible conditions. So going back to what we were saying about what is an ethical gemstone, the people aspect of that we mustn't forget that in the cutting environment, we equally have to look at the safety of the gem cutters as well as the gem miners, because there are terrible diseases, breathing diseases, silicosis, and that kind of thing that that our cutters can suffer from if we don't take the right precautions. So so absolutely, I mean, it's a crucial part of the supply chain.
And Melanie is so glad to have you here. She knows you've been working on these areas for a long time.
I have, and the thing is, as I said, we're part of a really nice family now of people, and some of whom have been working on it a lot longer, and I have for whom I have great respect, and you'll hear from them later on in some of the later sessions. So thinking people like Eric Brownwatt and Brian Cook in particular, some amazing projects that they've been doing for decades. So so I'm not here to take the majority of the credit. I think it's I'm building on the efforts of some that have gone before.
That's amazing. Tanya says thank you for touching on cutting, and Catherine is asking a question, if you don't mind answering. If you're able to speak to treated, heated versus untreated stones and what kind of effect that has on the environment. That might be off topic here, but
it might be, but I'm happy to give a quick answer to that. So it depends on the treatments, of course, because there are so many things that you can do to different gemstones. But if we take, for example, something like a heat treatment, because that's something that I'm quite familiar with. So with sapphires in Sri Lanka, for example, it's very common to give them a fairly standard heat treatment. So you're just using maybe an electric or a gas furnace. It's a very small piece of equipment, and it's a very controlled environment. And it's a fairly well recognized practice within the industry. And what you're trying to do is to improve the color and the clarity of a gemstone and make it a better looking gemstone, essentially. And in terms of the environmental impact, well, it depends how far you want to go in terms of your, I guess, analysis of the environmental, because of course in the heating process, then we will use different types of gas, and that has to be created somewhere. So there will be a carbon footprint or an environmental impact potentially with the gas production, but I would say that it's relatively minimal. We're using very small amounts of the gas or the electricity to actually affect the heat treatment. And I wouldn't like to go on to things like irradiation, of course. That's for some stones, that's a common treatment, and that's not something that we would really get involved in to any great extent. So I'm not an expert on that area.
Got it. Thanks for answering that. No worries, Catherine, for the off-topic question. We don't mind. We're here. Yeah, we're glad. So let's look at some gems. What do you have with you now? And we're going to look at the bigger gems because they show up better on camera. But you are able to go look at everything 1948 has to offer. I think that Rachel will probably drop a link into the chat with the gem shop.
Okay, so I'm going to show, first of all, just a few gems. Like you say, I'm going to focus on some of the larger stones. And these ones are actually in the boutique as well. And hopefully these will come out if I hold them up to the camera. So I'm going to break all of the rules of handling gemstones and use my fingers so that I don't throw them across the room. So if I can just hold this up and see if people can see that.
Wow.
So it's hard to get a real appreciation. So this is one of the garnets from the Moyo gems. Unfortunately, it's reflecting off my screen. But it's a really beautiful deep red. As you can see, it's a fairly large stone. So that's almost probably it's about 15 to 17 millimeters, I think, long. And we find a lot of these really beautiful Pyro, Rhodolite, Garnets in the region where we're operating in Tanzania with the Moyo project. This one has a deeper red color, so I'm hoping it might come out a little bit better. I'll put it closer to the camera.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can tell, yeah, you can see the color. At least I feel like I can see the color there. Really beautiful.
Not quite the clarity of the first stone, but certainly a really, really deep red. So we get some really beautiful colors, ranging from this red through to more of a purplish red, and then through even to a kind of pinky purple color range. And then lastly, let's try this one. This is one of the smaller of the ones that I was going to show, which is a Marcus cut. I don't know if you can quite catch the purple coming through there.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So you can see it's just a slightly different shade compared to those other two. And then, I mean, we find a lot of quartz varieties and things. So actually, I could just show you. I mean, here's a rough piece. This is not in the boutique, but just by way of a kind of view of the size. You know, this is a piece of citrine that we found quite a clean piece that I have available. So I chose not to cut that one. Sometimes we get asked for pieces that people want to cut themselves, so it's always good to have a couple of those in stock. And so from those large pieces of quartz, either citrine or also amethyst, then we're able to cut some pretty cool stones. And one of the advantages of having our own cutting workshop is, of course, that I can speak really, very directly and closely with our cutters and give them a little bit more of a free range. So you can see with this amethyst, it's a very unusual cut. Not for everyone, but we have a lot of customers who really like the less standard cuts. So with things like amethyst and citrine that we find in large pieces and fairly regularly, then we're able to let our cutters sometimes just express themselves. So they don't always have to just cut, 7mm rounds.
Yeah, I love the cut of that stone. And that amethyst seems a little bit, I'm not an expert. Amethyst is my first stone. I don't usually love it, but it feels like a lighter purple. It
is, yes. Actually, I can show you. So by comparison, if I show you this one, so this is a Sri Lankan amethyst, and hopefully you'll be able to see, it actually looks a little bit kind of almost like a tanzanite actually on the screen, but it's a much deeper purple. Yeah, so that's probably what people would call a more traditional amethyst color. But we do find, in Tanzania that we also find the lighter ones. Just to finish off a couple of the more unusual pieces, rough pieces from the Moyo side before we move on. I wanted to show you, I noticed the gentleman who was speaking earlier about in the Malawi presentation, he had a piece of scapolite, and I suddenly had scapolite envy because I only have one that is this size, which is an amazing piece, great crystal structure. But his was about 3 times as big, I think. But again, you can see that you could cut quite a large gemstone, or maybe a few different stones from a piece as big as that. And then if we're really lucky, and these are the pieces that I can't resist, even though they're not really what we focus on as a business, then you'll get one with a beautiful crystal shape like this. So unfortunately, the color isn't quite coming across, but this is in fact corundum. This is ruby.
Wow.
And you can see the really good hexagonal crystal shape that comes through. So what I did do with a smaller piece that was like that was I had one of our cutters just indulge me and create this little egg.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so I haven't actually put that on our website because I'm not sure I can part with that one. But yeah, so it's amazing the range of material that we're finding with Moyo, and I know that you'll be able to see some more in the Anza Gems presentation later. It's fascinating as a gem supplier, just to be there dealing with the miners. I wasn't going to show any of the smaller stones, as you said, because it's a little bit too tricky on the camera. But then just moving on to some of our Sri Lankan stones, I showed already the amethyst. This one is one of the cut citrine, really beautiful stone. And this one will have been heat treated as well, actually, to get this amazing color. But still absolutely stunning. So you can see that there. I mean, really, a stone like this shows the skill level that we're lucky enough to have in the cutting community in Sri Lanka. I mean, they've been cutting gemstones there for such a long time that we are very fortunate to have some very skilled people indeed.
That piece is incredible. That citrine.
Yes, and it's and then just to go one step bigger. This one actually came from our own gem mine in Sri Lanka. So this is an aqua. This is a 60 carat aqua. This one is in the boutique. If anyone's looking to make a huge pendant or maybe a tiara or something like that, then you can have a look at this one. But yeah, this one came off a really large block of aquamarine that we found, and it was the cleanest, biggest stone that we could cut from that block. So really quite a spectacular stone. Ideal for this kind of presentation, being so massive.
People are shocked in the comments about that aquamarine, and it would be perfect for a tiara.
And then I'm going to just mention one other country that we source from, that we source from a particular project in Malawi. So just following on again from the previous presentation, because these are currently a couple of the biggest sapphires that I have in my collection. So I wanted to show these. And I'm hoping that the color will come out okay. But this one is just over an 8 carat sapphire. I don't know if you can see and this has the very distinctive kind of greenish blue. So it's not quite in focus. Greenish blue color, as opposed to the royal blue. So beautiful, again, cushion cut, very large sapphire. But if you really want to impress your friends, then probably this is the sapphire that you need, which is just a shade over 11 carats. And again, it's a nicer, darker blue, actually, not so much of the green tinge to it. Yes, that would sit nicely on someone's finger, I'm sure.
I love the shape of that one.
Also in the gem boutique.
And Rachel is sharing the links to these stones. Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have more?
I think those are the main ones that I was going to show, because those are the large ones that people can appreciate through the camera.
Yep, definitely. And all the links are in the chat, so make sure you visit 1948's Gem Boutique and look at all of the stones available. So I was wondering, because I work more client-facing directly with designers, as a marketer, I was wondering what trends you're seeing in terms of gemstones.
The trends, I think this is a benefit of being quite, like I said before, a newbie to the industry, is that I don't have a lot of the historical perspective. And I think what I've seen probably in the trends in the last 10 years is that, the very recent trends, is that, and I think this is probably generally accepted in the industry, is that there's been quite a shift away from diamonds to colored stones in general. Yeah, so working in diamonds, you may have come across that yourself. So I think that, obviously that's great for me, because that's what I'm trading in. And I think also on top of that, that there's probably been people have been more adventurous. People have looked outside of the big three. And although I love to, to sell a sapphire, that's great, beautiful stones. But when someone comes to me, for example, from the Moyo project, again, we had some kyanite. And I don't know if people are familiar, but it's a beautiful kind of blue-green, almost like an aquamarine on a good day. And it was just something unusual. And of course, for a designer, that can be quite a challenge, because you make up a beautiful piece with some kyanite, and most of your customers will come along and go, "What's a kyanite?" I don't know, but I've noticed as a trend that people have been ready to look at less common types of gemstone and put those into their pieces, which is fantastic, because that's what we want. We want all of those stones that people are working so hard to get out of the ground. We want them to be worn. That's the whole thing. And then I think the last thing in terms of the trends, of course, is what we're all talking about throughout this whole week, is the responsible sourcing, the sustainability, if you like, as well, and the traceability and the transparency. So that really, even when I came into the industry, it was not even really on the bottom of people's agendas at conferences. And now we have our own conferences, and every event you go to, and every piece of marketing almost you see now from the big organizations, the big jewelry brands, they are taking into account their commitments to responsible sourcing. So that is definitely a trend, and that's only going to go one way. And I think the conditions that we found this year with the pandemic, of course, I think have focused people even more on how they consume and the choices they are making when they're buying things. So yeah, I think we're going to see even more of that, and that's how it should be. So those are the major trends.
I completely agree. And that's what I'm seeing from my end too. Lots of colored gemstones, very much a focus on sustainability and the ethical side of things. And then also just the meaning. I feel like people connect with gemstones, and consumers, people who don't know anything about gems, will connect with that kyanite because it's the color that they love, and it's just, it's striking to them. And they're not worried about it being a sapphire or a ruby or an emerald. So.
Yes, I think so. I think it's great to see people being more adventurous, and yeah, just really embracing the story of the gems and the background of the gemstone, and really wanting to buy things that have a much more meaning, there's much more significance, not just to themselves but also to the people that have been involved in the production of those pieces. So that's great to see.
Yeah, very good. Well, thank you so much, Stuart. Again, make sure you visit 1948's gem shop today, now that you know the whole background and Stuart's favorite gems and what he has to offer. Definitely check that out. Thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you very much, Liz. It's been great. And I've just put a few links into the chat for people to follow us on social media.
Very good.
Thank you, everyone, for coming along and listening.
Yep, thank you. Stay tuned for more.